At the end of March this year, I recorded a podcast called The Joy of Showing Gratitude. And I retold a tale, one of my favorites, from a friend of a friend who had a one night stand with Edward Van Halen. Yes, the EVH, way back in the 90s. And they had an amazing time, and it was an amazing time that I love to hear about. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. The most endearing part of the story, though, isn't the sex or the drugs or the rock and roll, but the showing of gratitude months, maybe even more than a year or two after the fact. So, to summarize, my friend of a friend saw Eddie and his brother Alex at Planet Hollywood or one of these trendy LA places. And frankly, the friend of a friend looks a little bit like Valerie Bernelli, on the shorter side at the time, the 90s poofy perm. And they made eye contact. Alex left. Eddie invited her for a romp in her car, which led to her apartment. But the essence of the story isn't even the passing of the syrup over pancakes for breakfast, which she found most endearing. But what I found most endearing was she saw him on tour with Van Halen after this little tete-a-tete. And while Eddie's on stage doing his flashy guitar work in front of thousands, he looked over and saw her in the crowd and gave her a line of sight thumbs up. So Eddie not only remembered her, but acknowledged her and, in a sense, thanked her. Eddie didn't have to do that. Eddie did it because it felt good. Because the joy of showing gratitude is intrinsic, very human. And to the point I'm making in this podcast, woefully deficient in our society. Hello, and welcome back to No Hair, All Heart. I'm your no-haired, bald host, Mookie Spitz. And the heart I'm going to share today is the gratitude deficit. Over the weekend, our president, Donald Trump, signed his big, beautiful bill as his one-time friend and now, apparently, frenemy to enemy Elon Musk has observed the bill can't be both big and beautiful because it racked up $3-4 trillion in deficit. So contrary to what our president mentions in terms of record reduction in spending, the overall expense of the package blows the bank, increases our already astronomical 33,000 billion dollar deficit by a few more thousand billion. So you just kind of shrug and say, hey, well, what's a few $1,000 billion? Well, we're in a sense borrowing money to pump the stock market up, because what do wealthy people do who are the primary recipients of this tax cut package do with their extra coin? Well, they invest it. So the stock market will probably do better. The country, I'm not so sure. The point of this rant is apolitical. I'm merely using that as an analog where we are a culture where we're used to going into debt. Our government boosts the deficit, even if ostensibly they were elected to reduce it. Personally, we're racking up debt in record numbers. I'm not one to say. My own QuickBooks spreadsheet probably hasn't been in worse shape, but it's been for a noble cause, so I can rant in podcasts to you fine folks and write books and blogs and bloviate. It's a mission that I have taken upon myself at whatever expense I need to incur. I'm not making excuses. I'm merely saying no pain, no gain. And I'm not absolving myself of this debt crisis, a microscopic version of our macroscopic societal problem. I'm not immune. But the metaphor works when it comes to gratitude. And here I try to flip the narrative just a little bit. I go out of my way to show people gratitude, if for no other reason than what was exemplified in my little podcast story of Eddie Van Halen, which is one of the joys of life is to show gratitude. When we show gratitude, we are tipping our hat to the universe. We are acknowledging that we are blessed to exist, that we're blessed to experience life. We encourage sharing and giving as a joyful expression of ourselves, realizing that we make the world a better place not only for others, but for us in the sharing, in the giving. And that attitude of feeling every day is special is one of the most wonderful feelings. And if anything else, just makes life all that much more awesome and worth inhabiting. So, given all that, what I've noticed and what you've noticed and what's become pervasive in our society is the opposite. People have such a hard time showing gratitude, which shouldn't be surprising because they themselves, we ourselves, are not particularly gracious, are we? We squabble. We are the healthiest, best fed, best educated, having the highest quality of living really in human history. You could quibble about the economy. You could quibble about our overall quality of life. You can compare it to that of other countries. But as I like to say, an Egyptian pharaoh would lose his mind walking into a Piggly Wiggly or Kentucky Fried Chicken or supermarket. The prevalence of food and the availability of health care, despite all of our challenges, despite income equality, despite all of the twisted and perverse excesses of our society, we live better than ever before. There's no doubt about that. And yet, maybe because of that, we feel entitled. We're spoiled rotten. We complain about everything. And with that is the destruction of this feeling of gratitude. If you're complaining all the time and you're upset and you're more and more polarized and hating your neighbor, where does gratitude fit in? It doesn't. And if you can't feel gratitude about your own life and grateful for living this life, then how are you going to show gratitude to your fellows? You can't, you won't. From personal experience, I'm often flabbergasted, and not to complain or paint myself victim of the reverse, but in instances where I go above and beyond by any stretch, I'm often stymied and mortified by the lack of gratitude that I experience, whether helping colleagues get jobs, whether it's empowering family members, the lack of reciprocation, at least in terms of acknowledging the effort made on their behest, often stuns me. Now, I know I come across now as demanding quid pro quo. And trust me, that's not my motivation. I don't help people or do things for people simply to get that return. And certainly I could be helping society and the world more than I am now. I'm hardly a Peace Corps volunteer or busy recycling my garbage at the moment. So, am I a Time Magazine exemplary human? I don't really think so, but I'm just relating the everyday experiences of a life lived trying to be nice and help people out, whether friends, family, colleagues. And again, I am surprised, even though the reaction seems inevitable. And the inevitability of it is what I'm getting at here. Where as a society, we've just accustomed ourselves to not really giving a shit. And when people just don't care, they're inured to not only the bad news, but the good news too. And I think this gets to the essence of the problem, which is we become hyper focused on bullshit. We ignore the big benefits and the big advantages that we do have. And in so doing, we have shielded ourselves not only from bad news, but from good news too. And with that, out goes the sense or obligation of some kind of reciprocation or acknowledgement. So let me be more specific. In areas of work where I have referred people for opportunities, where I've gone out of my way on their behest, I can't think of a single incident where the person that I was advocating for really acknowledged or even symbolically expressed gratitude. I might have gotten a thanks. Oh, by the way, thanks. But instances where I've literally put tens of thousands of dollars into people's pockets and not even the offer of, I'll buy you a drink. With young people, I encounter this a lot throughout my career. There'd be folks where I refer them to a business. Sometimes I've helped transform their entire career. And then, okay, let's go out and celebrate. And hey, Mookie, I'll buy you a drink. I'll buy you dinner. No, it doesn't even cross their mind. And again, it's not about the 20, 30, 50, $100. It's about gratitude. It's about feeling and expressing gratitude. And when it comes to my own family, and now I know I'm sounding like a griper, but I don't mean to sound like a whiner here. If you've been listening to me at all, I never whine. I never gripe. It's not, oh, woe is me, pity is on me. I'm using this to just illustrate this endemic attitude. And I'm also doing it because I know that you could relate to it. And you've probably been equally frustrated. That people have trouble saying thank you, that people have trouble acknowledging the good while they ignore the bad. And in this dog eat dog, Darwinian, shitty kind of business environment, that sense of of living in the jungle and survival, not only of the fittest, but of the meanest and most callous, translates to this feeling that by showing gratitude and even thanking somebody, you're showing some kind of vulnerability. You're opening yourself up to something. I don't really get it. So again, the point of this little mini rant is to just share some of my frustration my consternation and even confusion. And I'm sure you can identify with it. In the area of family, too, I legally adopted my wife at the time's niece from a foreign country. I legally adopted her. I was asked to do it, and I adopted her. She was 10 when she joined our family, and I clothed her, and I fed her, and I bought her Apple gadgets, and I provided a safe, endearing, loving household. And I ostensibly did it so that she could become an instant older sister to my two boys at the time who were young. So she showed up when she was 10. My boys at the time, I believe, were like 6 and 2, 6 and 3. And it was mission accomplished. So who am I to complain? But here's one vignette which illustrates the lack of gratitude that I'm getting at. She graduates NYU 12 years later. Her natural parents fly in from across the world, and they don't even text me to go fuck myself. They're in the same city. They fly into New York from across the planet, and they go with her to her graduation from NYU, and they don't even acknowledge that I exist after raising their daughter for longer than they ever did. Now, clearly, there was a divorce as backdrop, but so what? And I bring this up because this is my favorite example of this lack of gratitude, which isn't just an American thing. I think it's this global thing, and I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And I think it really does center on this notion of power and power relationships and this universal, ubiquitous feeling that by thanking somebody and showing gratitude, then you're giving them more of your power, more of their power. And by that I mean, if you have the audacity to help somebody, then they de facto are dependent on you. You have done something for them. And that puts them off. That puts them at a disadvantage because even if they've benefited from your good graces, they, in a sense, owe you that. They didn't do it. You gave it to them. And if they would reciprocate or acknowledge that giving, then it puts them off twice over, which is not only are they disadvantaged by you giving, them taking, them benefiting, and them being dependent on your good graces, but then by acknowledging that you did that and thanking you and showing gratitude for helping them out, they're hit with it all over again. Not only are they reminded of everything that's catapulted them forward with your help, but then they expose themselves all over again to the reaction formation they're trying to avoid by basically just shunning you after they receive the benefits of your efforts. Now, this might sound crass, but it's very much human nature. Countless stories in the Bible, countless stories throughout literature where this has been common. But I do believe it's more acute now than ever before for all the reasons I've been talking about. And I also think that it's more necessary than ever before, given how our society is just skittering out of control in terms of basic courtesy being lost, the sense of humility, this sense of even politeness. It's all going out the window. And I think the heart of it rests in this inability or unwillingness to show gratitude. And it's a shame, and it's not talked about enough. And if you've been tracking my podcast, this podcast is a little bit awkward too, which is I'm slightly tongue tied in the sense where I don't want to come across as a whiner, as I mentioned. And it's more delicate and emotional and subjective. And I could place the mirror up for my own hypocrisy, where I remember many instances where I didn't show sufficient gratitude towards someone who got me a break or did something special for me, and it didn't even enter my mind. But in all fairness, I think I was younger, and I've learned over the years that this is just bad behavior. It sucks. And I don't really know what anyone can do about it except point it out as I am, not with this saintly, altruistic intent, but simply to share some of my thinking, maybe even act as a catharsis for my frustration. But I think it's important just in terms of identifying it and calling it out. I don't see it talked about enough. I see all this focus on how polarized we are politically and culturally. And I see all this focus on all the negative aspects of policy or people, cultural norms. But this idea of gratitude being lost in the mix, I think, isn't ancillary. I think it's absolutely central to our malaise right now. And I think it kind of sucks. As I mentioned, I've been on the receiving end of it, and I've given it out in proportion. What also comes to mind is my own childhood, which was difficult. And I had a life partner a few years ago, and we were talking about my father in particular. And she asked me if there's anything that I regret about my relationship with him after our arduous relationship, if you can call it that, which led to estrangement and all the usual disasters that are associated with a bad father son relationship. And I've intimated and talked about some of that on some of my pods and in my writing, and I'll continue to do so. But she was basically enamored by my letting go and my resilience in moving on and just getting all over that, and not only forgiving my father per se of what I felt I should forgive him for, but my determination to admire him in other ways and just take it as it came, so to speak. And then as a capper to it, she asked, "Well, is there anything you regret that you regret about the relationship? That if he'd still be alive, or that if you could communicate to him?" And I instantly responded by saying, "I never really thanked him. I never really showed the gratitude that I should have shown him for all the things that he did do for me that were ostensibly beneficial and that came from his heart and that were really trying to help." So, wrapped up as I was in all the negativity and the pain and the conflict, what fell through the cracks was my own gratitude toward my father. And same rules applied to my mother. And same rules applied to many people in my youth, where I'm a kid and I just took for granted that I was a kid, that I received and they gave. And if they didn't give sufficiently or in the way that I thought they should, then I was being abused or neglected. And that's how most kids think. That's the point of view of a child. So my top line takeaway, in addition to gratitude, the gratitude deficit only getting worse in our society with interest accruing to the state of unsustainability, is that if nothing else, this gratitude deficit and this lack of appreciation that so many of us feel and exude and communicate with each other and to ourselves is a real tell. And what it reveals more than anything else is that we're just unable or unwilling to grow up as a society. A lot of our venting and kvetching and complaining are not only expressions of an entitled, bratty society, but one that has remained stubbornly childish. We're like little kids who can't show appreciation, who can't acknowledge that we ourselves are empowered with our own lives and with the obligation, in a sense, to treat other people with the golden rules rule. And central to it, I think, again, is this feeling of gratitude. So we're childish, we're entitled, and we're doing ourselves ultimately a disservice by being unable or unwilling to give back what we have received, and to do so not so much with the expectation of being thanked. We don't need a back scratch or a quid pro quo response, but just this feeling of community and commonality and connection. And I think I'll end with that, which is what's really being lost is the continued conversation that giving engenders. If you go out of your way for somebody, so for example, specifically, whether you adopt them legally from another country and then they just don't give a shit about you and neither do their parents, or you refer someone to a career or a job, or you put money in their pocket or give them an opportunity for a creative project, when you're kind of driving it and leading it and then it just burns out. It's like you toss that bone and then they gnaw on it and then they're gone. It's not really a relationship. It's not really a connection. It's a transactional state where the recipient feels awkward but'll take it anyway, and the giver feels neglected and resentful. That kind of sucks. A more ideal scenario would be the recipient being grateful and reciprocating in some way, even if just symbolically. And then the relationship continues in a friendly way, that the giving was an expression of enhancing and embellishing and fueling the connection between two people rather than an act of convenience or an act of trying to demonstrate one's wherewithal or power over someone else, which is how it becomes emotionally interpolated, per what I was mentioning earlier. So, how can we fix this? How can we become more mature with giving and getting? And how can we just feel better if we give and nothing comes back? And I think the answers mostly rest within just oneself, which is showing gratitude for one's own life and being grateful for what each of us have, including feeling gratitude for being able to give in the first place, whether or not there's any form of reciprocation whatsoever. Because if you have the luxury of being able to give, then your cup naturally overfloweth, right? You have a job or a connection and you share it. You have, a family and then you welcome someone in. You have a creative idea and then you partner with someone wanting to make it happen. You have all of these energies and feelings, and for whatever reasons, things might get a little fucked up or the result might be unsatisfactory in an emotional way or other ways, but that doesn't really matter, because as long as we keep giving with no expectation of any kind of reciprocation, then life is good. When the giving stops and when you personally no longer feel gratitude and you're unable to share what you've got, then you've got real issues. So I think the solution begs the question of there being a problem, akin to writing a book that few people might be interested in, or bloviating on a podcast where where it might have limited distribution, or continuing to lose until you win with no guarantee that you're going to win. We do things intrinsically that we love to do because we love to do them. And that is another way of expressing gratitude. That we're grateful to be able to just give, we're grateful to be able to just create. And if we were really into the giving and we were really into the creating in and of themselves, there could be and there should never be expectation of any kind of reciprocation. And I think this is the key story for anyone feeling this kind of frustration. Do I have regrets about adopting my wife at the time's niece? No, absolutely not. Do I have regrets about starting creative partnerships that might not have worked out? No. Do I have regrets that I've helped many people along in their career? No. These are all awesome, awesome things. And it makes me feel better as a person that I could give something back. Because I'm sure I take in ways where I don't reciprocate sufficiently and don't even know about it. So I leave you with that feeling, which is, are you grateful for what you got? Have you been steamrolled or neglected after giving? And do my words make any difference for you in the sense of just taking yourself out of that sense of expectation? Just keep doing what you're doing, keep giving if giving's your nature. And sooner or later, the universe abides. I like that. It's like the dude abides in Big Lebowski. The universe abides. Just keep giving, keep throwing it out, keep feeling good about yourself. We really live in the moment, make every moment as fun and magical and special and full of gratitude and giving as you can, and then you can't go wrong. And along the way, you will feel frustrated. And then it's okay to bloviate and have a catharsis, which is what this podcast is all about. But maybe that acts as its own bridge to something better. And at the very least, an opportunity to, after all the smoke clears, feel even more gratitude. So thanks for listening. I just had to get that one off my chest. Like, comment, share, show your own gratitude. And I will always appreciate it, whether or not you do.